Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be reacting to 4 true night shift horror stories animated. Now, a lot of people have been loving this series, so I do plan on continuing this series. So, celebration! Anyway, let's get into this. Now, today's animations are brought to you by MGV Animations, so go give them So go give them a little look-see at their channel. Oh my god, shut up guys. I have things to record. Over time, I'm just gonna keep getting more diva. Just saying. You've been warned.
This happened about 20 years ago. I was 9 years old at the time, but my parents have also told me their side of this story on a bunch of different occasions, so that should help. My parents are both biologists. They met at work, and from there it was history.
They got money.
The place where they worked at the time was a government building dedicated to biology research, used in government projects.
I didn't know that MGV owned their own laboratory. Am I loud again? I am so sorry. I keep getting too loud. But look at that. They got their own laboratory. They're balling out here.
Turned towards the public, meaning they were the ones studying the environment and making environmental protection laws around their studies.
Awesome.
This being a massive old government building, it always had a security guard present, day and night. During the day, these security guards would mostly just stay at the reception and greet people, but at night, they would go do their rounds and make sure there were no intruders, because of all the science equipment and computers kept in the building. Initially, one of the guards seemed like the nicest person. He was always really nice to me, and frankly, all the memories I have from him before this were really nice. He would greet me.
Before this, I think that security guard's gonna get up to some no good. But fun fact, I actually used to work as a security guard at a theme park, a water park, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed it, but I'm also like only 5'3", so I don't know if people took me too seriously, especially with piercings and dyed hair, but I try. A girl can try.
And talk to me in the nicest way every time my parents brought me to work. He would make me paper planes, which he was surprisingly good at, and throw them around with me. And he would stay with me at the reception on days my parents had to work in the night. Obviously for me, that would get really boring.
I'm sorry, I need to text them right now and tell them I'm recording a video. Hopefully they stop.
Really fast, so he'd keep me company and entertain me. Mostly we would talk, play with the paper planes, and watch TV. It all seemed nice enough.
What TV you guys
Nice
watching?
enough for my parents to trust him with me, which was probably their biggest mistake. One night, my parents had to work even later than usual. I think it was around 10 p.m. and they were still at it. So this guy who was on the night shift decided to take me around the building with him to do his rounds. We started on the top floor, checking all the rooms in the exterior part of the roof. Every room was so dark that I'd always stay a little behind and wait for him to turn on the lights. Then we
That's a me activity as well.
stepped down to the second floor where my parents' office and labs were. We checked the opposite side of the building, going into labs with massive extractors, microscopes, and every kind of science equipment you might think of. We walked down the stairs to the first floor, where most of the administration rooms were. I still remember seeing some maps on the walls, and embalmed fish everywhere, serving as decorations.
Embalmed fish as decor? Yikes.
First floor was all clear, so it was time to check the 2 basement levels. I thought it would have made sense to check the labs on the right side first, as the left side had a flight of stairs at the end, leading up to where my parents were, but for some reason, he decided we go check that side first. We checked all the labs, but I noticed his pace was accelerating, and he was starting to look and sound happier. Excited even. Once again, we checked all
Bro's gonna kidnap him. He's gonna try to kidnap my boy. I know he was evil!
the labs, all the corners from one end to the other, turning the lights on ahead of us and turning them off behind us when we left. When we got to the last area, he turned all the lights on, and he went inside. There were 3 separate offices on each side of the lab, and on the first one, he hurried towards the printer, opened it up, took out 2 pieces of paper, and made 2 quick paper planes. That's when
Maybe I misjudged him. Maybe I misjudged him. Maybe he's actually a pretty good guy.
everything changed. He picked up one of the planes, went outside of the office, and threw it towards the end of the room. Then he told me the one he just threw was mine and that we could throw them around in there. I ran to the other side of the room to pick my plane up, excited to play with it, and suddenly the lights went off. When I turned around to check what was happening, I saw him getting out of the lab and turning the lights off and locking the door. I ran to the door, punched it and kicked it while screaming for him to open it. Panic taking over me because of how scared I was being in the dark at the time. Through the glass on the door, I could see him scurrying away into the corridors.
What is he doing? I don't understand. I thought he was gonna kidnap him at first, and now he's just locking him away, saying, "All right, I'll just come back later. Maybe I won't."
Turning the lights off as he went and disappearing after turning a corner. I'm pretty sure that everything I felt and every shadow and creepy monster I saw in there while waiting was part of my imagination because of how scared I was. I balled up against a corner and could see shadows moving around me in the dark. I could only cry, lost, without knowing what was happening and why he was doing this. My parents finished.
Is that the scary story? Is like that it? Just you got locked in a room in the dark and you're scared?
Work eventually, and when they did, they packed their things and made their way to the lobby to pick me up and go home. When they got there, the security guard was at the reception, but I was nowhere to be found. They panicked, of course, and must have shouted 100 different cuss words at the guy. I'm not sure how my dad didn't murder him.
Nah, they didn't. They didn't cuss at him at all. They were like, "Oh, okay, too bad, Timmy's gone. We'll see him another day, I guess."
Him right then and there. But when they first asked the guy where the hell I was and what he had done with me, he simply said that he had gone to do the rounds with me, and I must have gotten lost somewhere. This is a building that would take you about an hour and a half to check from top to bottom.
Why is this his cover story? I'm sorry, but if you have a child with you and you lose it, I'm sorry, but you need to have a better story than, "Oh yeah, child must have gotten lost somewhere and I didn't notice and I also didn't," or like, of course, A, you have to notice because that child is with you. It's one child. And B, what do you mean? Like, you didn't go looking for said child?
Even if you're rushing. So, must have gotten lost somewhere is not exactly helpful. They looked for hours without finding me. It was only when I saw a far light at the end of the corridors leading to the lab that I was in that I got the courage to stand up, rush towards the door, and start punching as hard as I could. They finally found me there and made the guard unlock the door to get me out. I don't really remember sleeping that night, and if I did, it must have been out of exhaustion. But I know I made my mom stay in the bedroom with me the entire night. Of course, my parents made a complaint against the guard, and when they did and the guy started being investigated, he was actually fired and arrested. Not because of locking me away where he probably hoped no one would find me, but because he had been partnering up with criminals to steal computers and equipment from the building to sell in some shady market, along with the information in the hard drives, and make money off of it. By then, he had stolen a lot of old computers without anyone realizing, and who knows what his plans were for me that night. I'm not convinced that locking a crying child in the middle of the darkness, hidden away in some room, is exactly the most normal behavior if you're not trying to hide them and get them later when everyone else has left, and sell them as a part of your product. Luckily, he never had the chance to do that.
I don't think that was his plan. I think that he just needed to get some more computer parts to sell, but the kid obviously was with him, so he couldn't do that. So he kind of just locked the kid away and said, "All right, I'm gonna go do what I need to do now and pretend that I lost him."
And I really hope he never got to do it to any other kid.
Yeah, no, I think everything is more mundane here. Maybe not mundane, but it could have been a lot worse. But I don't think this guy had cruel intentions towards the kid, hopefully. I think it was just he was trying to make some money and the kid was in the way, and the kid would have said something like, "Hey, by the way, the security guard I was with took some computer parts," you know, something like that. So I think everything's okay, hopefully.
About 3 years ago, I, 21 female, was a waitress during the height of COVID. It was my first ever...
Wait. Is this a Reddit story? I, 21 female, with my spouse, 69 male. What?
job, and I remember being so excited to start as soon as possible, after all my training was finished and I got my certifications. We closed at 10 p.m. every night at the time, and typically it was just my cook, a 20-year-old guy, and I. Rarely would there be another waitress with me, and I liked it that way. I always worked better alone, and I didn't really get along with most of the other waitresses anyway, so it was actually nice. I can remember it was near the end of my time there that this experience happened, and I'm really happy I had the circumstance.
Why does it kind of look like Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in that place?
As I did at the time. I never could really trust my gut very much because I had mild anxiety and couldn't tell if what I felt half the time was valid or not.
Same.
I mentioned this because when this all went down, it felt real, and I had an absolute feeling. I had started my shift that evening around 3 p.m.
Sorry, those booths are weird. Like they're not against the wall. Do you see that? They're like in the middle of the chairs, but typically booths sit against the wall and just are longer.
I said goodbye to the last waitress, and I was on my own with my cook. Everything was pretty slow and normal.
Oh no, is the cook gonna be evil? Not the cook. Not the TCM cook is evil.
Until I got a call about one of the specialty items on a limited time menu that we had. The food couldn't be ordered as takeout, and the lady over the phone really didn't take it well.
Okay, this reminds me of my job that I currently have. Like I said before, I work at a gym, so I often get very mean phone calls. One time someone called me the N-word, and obviously I'm white, but it was over the phone. So I don't know, I was more amused than like offended or angry. And that's the thing about customer service. I don't ever really get angry at a person because it's my job not to, and whatever. I know not to take it personal. These people are just having a bad day most of the time. But I've had some stories go down over the phone of people getting mad at me, and I'm just like, I didn't make the rules, shoddy. It's not my fault.
After a little debating, she finally decided to sit and eat instead. I'd say around 10 to 20 minutes later is when I spotted an older looking car pull up, and 3 people came out. 2 men and a woman who looked to be in their...
His arm glitched, guys. His arm glitched. Where's the arm glitch? Let me see that again.
Around 10 to 20 minutes later is when I spotted an older looking car pull up.
Where's the arm glitch?
Came out.
Look.
2 men and a woman who looked to be in their 30s or 40s.
She looks kind of young. She has a grunge look going on.
I could tell that it was the same lady I spoke to over the phone, judging by her attitude coming in. I further confirmed it by asking, since I already had a pretty good idea of what she wanted to eat. What I thought was an act of mild embarrassment and pettiness was actually something more sinister later on. Her attitude towards me changed when she saw me. She was much nicer and more cooperative.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I talk to them on the phone, people can be very nasty, but then when they come in person, they're nicer because you're in person. You know, it's the same thing of like, it's easy to make a comment online saying F you, but saying that in person is a lot scarier.
This didn't ring any bells at first because it was something that most people who wanted to look good in front of others would do. I sat them at a booth and took their orders. I noticed they had a red binder and a black pen. Remember this.
Okay.
I then went to tend to my other customers, as there were a couple other tables I was waiting on. Once I brought their food out to them, they asked me if I knew any realtors. I found this to be fairly normal, as this being a tourist vacation state it is, it wasn't uncommon for outsiders to be looking for a getaway home. I would say this was reasonable for me to assume it was nothing if they didn't already look like the unsavory type of people, if you get what I mean.
I don't like helping people, but if somebody asks me like for a realtor, like they're like, do you know any realtors? I'm not gonna tell you. I'm sorry, but Google is a thing. If you're gonna ask me, oh, do you know any blah blah blahs? I'm gonna say hell no, unless it's food. If they're like, do you know any good food nearby? Then I'll answer, because I do know good food near my job.
Nonetheless, I gave them the phone number of a realtor I knew closely, since I often went to church with her. There weren't any other notable interactions I really had aside from occasional small talk if I wasn't doing anything or refilling their drinks. It was around 4:30 p.m. now, and they were the last of my tables to leave the restaurant. If any of you are in the food industry, you know that as a server you don't really get breaks. Just a lunch most of the time, and sometimes not even that if it's super busy. So my cook and
I just zoned out. I had no idea what they just said, and I'm not gonna rewind it either.
I took this as an opportunity to take a well-deserved break. We walked out behind them and had a small chat with them. I should mention by now that the front of the restaurant had a disabled ramp coming up to the doors.
Okay.
It was long because the building was on a raised foundation. This is important. Now,
Okay.
I didn't really notice it at the time, but one of the men took my cook to the other side of the ramp, down near the end, and was chatting with him over a cigarette. I was behind the railing at the top of the platform where the ramp plateaued.
So if they're the only ones in this place, why are they on break right now? Like, I kind of assumed in restaurants you can't take a break if there's nobody else that can cover for you. I guess if you're a cook and there's no, like, current orders going on, but as a waitress, I feel like it's really hard for you to take a break when you still have tables.
Luckily, the other man and the woman were on the other side of the railing, about 5 feet below, but in front of me. We were having some small talk, and they started to ask some personal questions. such as if I lived in the area, if I smoked weed, how
Why does he look like that? He's like evil.
old I was, etc.
I'm
I
about to
hadn't
get
quite
YouTube
learned
Premium.
yet that telling strangers such personal things wasn't a good idea. However, this for some reason
Okay, just in case you haven't learned yet that telling strangers personal details about you is a bad idea, don't do it, okay? It's not worth it because questions like that can lead to them getting to know how to murder you better, okay? Like if they ask, oh, you got a dog? You got a dog? Is anything gonna bark if I try to take you from your home? You got any relatives? You got a boyfriend? Oh my god, do you guys live together? So you live all alone, eh? Interesting. That's why I'm so wary of giving my information out on the internet. I don't like people to know where I am. Most of the time, I try to keep things very discreet. I don't want people knowing where I work. And then when I go to work, I don't like people knowing any details about my personal life. You know, coworkers, small talk is okay. But I try to keep details about my life to a minimal just so that things like this don't happen. I have always been very scared as a woman to be kidnapped, to be murdered, anything that's terrible. I've always been super cautious about these things, and I want you guys to also be cautious about these things. Always keep in mind your surroundings when you're out in public. Unfortunately, we do have to do these things, and just try to be as safe as possible. There are a lot of terrible cases out there with young people who are making stupid decisions that lead to bad things happening to them. So I just want you to make sure you're making the best decisions for your well-being. Keep aware. If you need to, you feel unsafe and there's nothing you can really do, maybe call your parents, call a friend, just so you can have someone on the phone in case something does happen to you. Just try to be as safe as possible, and if need be, you can always call your non-emergency police number and say, hey, there's, something sketchy happening. I just want to make sure I'm safe, blah, 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 blah. There's always somebody who can be there to support you and help you in these times that you are unsure. And never be afraid, okay? Well, I mean, never be afraid to cry wolf, if that makes sense, It's always better to be safe than sorry. Okay, Alexis rant over.
was starting to raise some red flags. I gave very vague answers to all of her questions as best as I could. Unfortunately, they still persisted in trying to have some sort of communication with me outside of my work, whether or not I said no. I suppose when they finally realized that I wasn't going to give that information up, the woman finally got to her point. She told me that she had a business offer for me. It was for a cleaning service. I don't like cleaning anyway, so regardless, I would have said no. However, what she said next solidified my answer. She proceeded to tell me that she owned a maid service called the Pretty Kitties Maid Service. She said that she needed pretty and young girls like me, and that she had 10 girls now as it was, and she wanted to expand. She mentioned how they got paid $30K. She didn't specify the time length and how it would be a great opportunity for me to help her.
$30K a year ain't shit. That's what I make at my 40 hours a week job. I am working myself to death. Only for $30K, which then gets taken by taxes down to like $27K. So it ain't worth it. $30K a week, however. $30K a month, however.
With her business. I instantly knew at that point that it certainly wasn't a maid business and I was in danger. However, I didn't understand just how much danger I was in. I politely declined her offer and told her I liked my job as it was, that I was satisfied working for my boss. She tried to further convince me by telling me how easy it was and reiterating how much I'd make under her supervision. She mentioned how she had a van for her business and described it to me. I can't exactly remember what she told me, but I do remember how she told me to follow her to her car. She said she'd show me a picture of her van in her car. Her phone was in her hands. I knew for certain I wasn't going anywhere with her or near that car. I declined yet again and said that I was fine right where I was. I said she could show me on her phone instead, but she was hesitant, after which she proceeded to end the conversation and left with the two men. A little shaken, I walked back into the restaurant with my cook and told him what I had just experienced. He joked about how I'd have good money if I went with him, because I didn't take the situation as seriously as I should have. I laughed with
I'm sorry, but men, not all men, but some men just, danger just, some people actually, just people in general. You tell them a situation that sounds dangerous and they're just like, they're like, nah, it was real. It's like they believe in those emails that a prince from Egypt is wanting to give you money.
with them. At the end of that night, when the cook's grandmother came to pick us up, I mentioned the weird interaction. A panicked look came over her, and she sat silent, staring at me. I got confused and asked her if everything was okay. That's when I learned the signs of human trafficking. She broke it to me that I was almost trafficked, and I was incredibly lucky I didn't get kidnapped. My stomach dropped, and I started to panic at the realization of how much danger I was in. Nothing really happened after that, except for the red binder and the black pen I told you to remember. I went to work the next day, and a customer walked in. Now, normally in my part of town, not many people like to sit and relax for a while. They're mostly there to just eat and leave, as it wasn't exactly a cafe. Well, I get into my apron and sit this gentleman. He was well dressed, not in a suit and tie, but just nicely dressed. He was alone. I sat him at a single booth and took his order of one single coffee. He had a red binder and black pen with him. I didn't even notice until my cook from the night before reminded me of it. I was so shocked at the fact, and it unsettled me even more that he proceeded to sit there for 3 hours, watching me as I tended to my tables. I kept asking him if he needed anything else, and he asked me if people never just sat and relaxed with coffee. I sort of shrugged and said no, not here. Now this might come as a surprise to some of you, but servers, believe it or not, do not listen in on some of your conversations. I'm lucky I did it with this one. I specifically remember him speaking over the
That can't be true. I'm sure servers do listen on conversations that are interesting. I would if I was a server.
phone about finances and how he needed to find another house. He spoke about moving money and how he was going to pay his girls that night. I ran to the back of the kitchen and told my cook. Thankfully, he came out with me to help deliver some plates in order to throw that guy off. It worked, I think. He ended up leaving not long after that, and I haven't seen or heard anything since. I'll tell you though, I've been much more on guard since then.
Human trafficking is genuinely something that's very scary, and luckily I don't think that I would be somebody who would get human trafficked in the ways that I not really prevent it, but they do say that human traffickers don't go after people with tattoos, and I do have, some tattoos on my arms. I don't know. It's something that I'm still very scared of. So if something often seems too good to be true, like a job opportunity, be very cautious about it, because that is exactly how human traffickers get you, and it can be very terrifying and scary, and I do not wish that upon anybody. Anyway.
Back in 2013, I had to go out and find an internship to be able to progress in my education. But at the time, it proved to be almost impossible to get one.
Is that Facebook?
So while I was looking, I decided to take another job just to make sure we had food on the table. I found out a friend of my fiance's family had his own handicap bus company, a kind of taxi service for wheelchair users or otherwise disabled people. And he needed someone to cover the night shift since it was a bus.
I know you guys can't see this. I'll try to show you real quick. But there's a short that's displayed on the side of my screen right now, and it looks so yummy. Let me see if I can show you. Ah, schnizzle. Hold on. You see that? Do you see the sushi, but the sandwich sushi? Oh, it looks so good, guys. It looks so yummy and delicious, and I just want to eat it. And I keep looking at it. It's a problem.
I had to be on call at least 22 hours a day. Seeing that I'm quite the night.
So, okay, I hope you're getting paid for those 22 hours that you are getting on call, because I know that for nurses who are on call, they get paid like $30 an hour while they're on shift, and then while they're at home on call, they're like $3 an hour or something, because you gotta make that money, honey. For being on call, you better be making money.
Night owl, I immediately told him that I'd be happy to take the job. And after I got the needed license, I was hired. The job was pretty basic. Pick up people and drop them off where they needed to go, and sometimes use a machine to get wheelchairs up or down some stairs. And when there were no trips, I drove to a designated area and did whatever while waiting.
Nice.
I quickly found a truck stop in the area where I could park and catch some Z's while waiting.
Okay.
There was a gas station where I would buy coffee in the early hours of the shift. And on the other side of the gas station's parking lot, on the opposite side of the truck stop, there was a rundown restaurant with a motel connected to it. To not disturb the sleeping truckers, if I got a trip in the middle of the night, I usually parked on the restaurant side. After parking there every night for a while, I noticed one particular room had a lot of people come and go.
Is it a hostel? Is that what it's called? A hostel? I don't think that's what that's called. I think I just, I meant a brothel. I just called it a hostel. Okay, hopefully hostel doesn't mean anything terrible.
In the beginning, I thought nothing of it. But then one night, at the end of the summer,
That moon. That moon.
while I was half asleep with the window slightly open, I suddenly heard yelling coming from the motel, and a dude came tumbling out of the room and started running. And a few seconds later, a big dude came running after him with something in his hand. I could
Oh,
not
he's
make
gonna
out what
get
it was.
shot.
I thought that it was none of my
Blah, blah.
business, and I went back to my half-sleeping waiting stage. Not much time passed, and my phone went off. I had a trip an hour's drive away, so I turned on the bus and was leaving the parking lot when I saw the big guy coming around the corner. The rest of the night,
Run him over.
I had back-to-back trips, so I didn't park until I got home. The day after, I didn't get a return to home zone until 2 or 3 a.m. When I arrived at the parking lot, the area where I used to park had fist-sized rocks strewn all over the place, not connecting the dots at the time. I just parked a few spots over and started waiting. I fell asleep pretty fast, but I was jerked back into reality when a car right in front of my bus honked its horn, flashed the high beams, and revved its engine. I thought it was just some idiot who noticed me sleeping and found it funny trying to make me shit myself. So I jumped out of the bus to tell him to fuck off. But instead of driving off or stopping, the driver made this start brake thing with the car indicating that I was the one who should fuck off. And then I connected the dots. Not wanting to seem like a pushover, I stood still and stared at the car. Not that I could actually see anything with the high beams almost blinding me. And after what seemed like a really long time, but must not have been more than 30 seconds, the car drove off. After that, I decided to park near the trucks from then on. A month or so passed, and nothing had happened since the car episode, and I figured that nothing more would if I just kept parking by the trucks.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's terrifying. I would never have a standoff with a car. It'd end up breaking my legs.
Then one night I had a long 12-hour shift on a Sunday, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I didn't have time to eat dinner before work that day. And during the first half of my shift, I had back-to-back trips with no time to eat. So when I got a return to home zone, I quickly parked in the far end of the almost empty truck stop and got ready to eat my now very late dinner that my fiance packed for me.
Aw.
I wanted to watch some TV on my phone while eating, so I sat with my back against the driver's side door and got comfy. While turning my back to the door, I accidentally hit the door lock with my elbow. But that was my luck. As I was sitting there scrolling Netflix on my phone.
Oops. Zoomed in. Why do you not lock your door? Why was locking your door an accident? Like, girly pop, always lock your doors.
And heard the clack of the door handle behind me smack back in position. I quickly turned and saw a dude with a hood over his head quickly crouching and proceeding to lay down on the ground and crawling under the bus with a big-ass kitchen knife in his right hand. I quickly got up and made sure the other two doors were locked, and then I looked in all directions to see if I could still spot him. He was still under the bus, and I was sure as hell not jumping out this time. Since the night—
I'm sorry, but turn on the engine before he cuts something down there and run.
made his intentions pretty clear. I turned on the engine,
Did I say run? I meant drive.
turned on the spots in the back of the bus, and looked around to see if it had scared him off. And lucky for me, it did.
Oh.
I saw him run off and into a bushy woody area at the end of the truck stop. I never parked at that truck stop again after that night. And I made sure all the doors were locked every time I was parked.
Yeah, as you should, buddy. So that's gonna be it for today. If you want to see the last video in this video, then you're gonna have to go check out MGV Animations and watch the video. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you later in another video. That was a lot of video. Anyway, bye.